Hey y'all, I hope that your semesters are getting off to a great start and that you're finding this class as exciting and enjoyable as I am. This video is a little bit different. Um, Rather than going over the concepts and the material that we're going to be covering in class, in this one I'm going to be talking about a specific assignment. So, as many of you know, and hopefully everybody if you read the syllabus, um, the instead of tests in this class, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Tests can be really narrow ways to test how well you've mastered material, and frankly, they're not very much fun. Especially in a class like this, where a lot of you are non majors and not necessarily going on into careers in biology. What we're concerned about is less a memorization of all the facts we give you and more that you understand the concepts that we talk about and that you can apply them to the world around you. Because of this, we're going to be doing something that are sometimes called unexams or unessays. Rather than it being a test or an exam that I give you and everybody gets the same thing, this is a self-directed project where you get to tie together the themes of the unit and express them in a creative project of your own choosing. This can look like a lot of different forms, but the main thing is that it's a way that you can express that you understand the concepts of this unit and can connect them in some way to some aspect of your life. So let's go over what that can look like and how that sort of thing ends up being graded, because that is an important question. All right, so let's cover the basics. These projects, and there will be three of them, are 100 points each, and basically they'll cover the same ground as whatever unit they're associated with the exception of the last one, which can cover the course more broadly. This project will be in place of any midterm or final, any sort of standard exam. This is a student-led project. The topic and form that it takes is ultimately up to you with some guidelines, but I really want to encourage you to be creative. What's the process? First things first, you got to brainstorm an idea. Now, I've provided a project proposal sheet in the module for Unit Capstones. This is not required, but I encourage you that if you're having trouble coming up with things or making a plan for your project, that you fill it out and maybe use that as a guide to help you decide what to do. There's three main things here to consider. The first is what topic you want to cover. For instance, in Unit 1, maybe you got really excited about chemosynthetic bacteria. Awesome. That's a great topic to cover. What comes next is what form it's going to take. This can be all sorts of different things. On the more standard end of things, if you would like to write a more standard term paper about the chemosynthetic bacteria, great. But I really encourage you to go beyond that and to try out other different forms of exploring this idea. This could be a more creative writing piece. This could be making some sort of video. It could be making a piece of art. The floor is wide open. And finally, consider the logistics. If, for instance, you want to do something that requires making a piece of art, think about how much time and the materials that are available to you. At this stage, this is where you start to maybe narrow down the scope of what you want to do and consider, is it feasible to work on? After you've come up with this idea and you've come up with an idea that you can present to me, you need to meet with me. We'll review what the proposed project is and agree on the scope and what needs to be turned in. Since for some people this will be as simple as a single Word document, in others it might be a collection of several different files that needs to be turned in. This meeting is required. You will not be allowed to turn in the project without doing this. And if you make any major modifications to your topic or your project over the course of doing it, you need to meet with me again just to check in and make sure everything's still approved. This can be during office hours, Wednesdays, 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific time, or if that doesn't work for you can email me and schedule a separate meeting outside of that. Next up, You gotta do the thing. Whatever it is, you need to go through the process of gathering your sources, researching it, and then doing whatever it is you've proposed doing. Finally, you're going to turn it in, and you'll need to double check that you are turning in all of the files that we have agreed on, and you will furthermore need to answer a series of 5 questions to access the assignment. These are part of the grade, so please do your best on them. You will only get 1 attempt to do them, and so please take them seriously. They are both for me to assess how much you took home from the material of the unit, but more importantly, they're also to make sure that the students in this particular section of the class are learning everything that we as faculty here at Mission College have agreed that should be learned in an intro bio course. Once you answer those, you will be given permission to turn in the files associated with your unit capstone. And that's it. That's the process. Please allow yourself enough time to complete whatever it is you want to do. But on the whole, this is really driven by you. Now, choosing what this project can look like can be a bit intimidating. After all, if you have all of this different potential ways of doing it open to you, how do you narrow it down? So I give several project examples, actually more than several. I give like almost a page of project examples in the guidelines for the capstone. But my overall advice ultimately boils down to these 3 principles. First of all, play to your strengths. If you love writing, awesome. But a lot of us struggle with academic writing, and that's totally okay. And so for this, I encourage you to think to what you do well. For instance, if you are an artist, definitely consider doing something in that medium. If you do like writing, but maybe you don't want to write an academic paper and you really love science fiction. Writing a short science fiction story, absolutely wonderful. If you're really good at videos, like maybe you're like a TikTok star or something, first of all, congrats. Second of all, great. You can use that as the medium for this assignment. You can even go outside of this. Maybe you're somebody who does a lot of outreach with your community, or you're somebody who works with kids in a scout group or outdoor education or something in those areas. You can come up with something that taps into that. Maybe you speak another language. Perfectly acceptable use of this project is to create something or translate something that you found really interesting into another language that you speak. I can grade things in English and Spanish, no problem. If it's another language besides that, I will work to make sure that I have the ability to grade that. That won't be your responsibility. Next, what's feasible? This is both in terms of how much time you can realistically devote to it and what material resources you need. More broadly, it also includes logistics. Say it's Unit 3, we've talked about environmental conservation, and you get inspired to go organize a cleanup of a local open space. Awesome. This is where you would be, okay, what's the scope of this? Are we going to be able to clean up the whole area? If that's what I really want to do, is this something that just I can do, or do I need to bring in a group of friends to do it? If you want to make something, consider the materials you have available. All of this is stuff to consider. And then finally, have fun. There's not really a great way for me to include that in as a requirement to be graded, but hopefully the spirit of this comes through. I want this to be something that you feel passionate about, whatever the topic and the form of it is. The point of this is to demonstrate that you are connecting with the course material and thinking about how it applies to the world around you. So, as you can imagine, the grading on this is a little bit different than it would be if this was a standard exam. So, let's walk through what this looks like. Again, all of these requirements are described in the unit capstone document, and a full rubric with what the gradations of each of these points, like, okay, if this category is worth 10 points, what 8 points look like? What does 5 points look like? Etc. So, the first points, these are kind of a gimme. You get 10 points for meeting with me. This is an all or nothing thing. Either you meet with me or you don't. And frankly, if you don't, you can't turn in the assignment. Again, this is a requirement to turn in this assignment, is that you meet with me, get your project approved. If you do that, there you go. You got 10 points automatically right out of the gate. If you don't, you got bigger problems. Next, answering those 5 student learning outcome questions as part of turning it in. Again, you're graded on whether or not you answer them correctly, but they're not the test. So 5 points, do your best. They're not going to be make or break it points. Now let's get into the actual criteria about the project itself. First up, 10 points for connection of your theme or topic to the overall unit. This is on multiple levels. So first of all, is the theme or topic of your project something that is in that unit? You know, it's all well and good if you want to do a project about genetics, but if you do it during the chemistry of life unit, that's not going to count towards this. And this is why it's going to be important that you sit down and talk to me to make sure that what you want to cover is indeed within the scope of the unit. Also covered in this is that you make that clear. For some things, this will be very self-explanatory. If you write something for some things, this will be very self-explanatory. If you're writing something, that should be pretty obvious. If you're doing a piece of art, though, in general, you're probably going to have to include as one of your files an artist statement where you clearly state why the piece that you have created is connected to the theme you are trying to convey. Next up, sources cited. Doesn't matter what project you're doing, you need to consult with at least 5 scholarly sources. I'll be making another video where we go over how you find these sources and evaluate whether or not they're scholarly or not, but you need to include these. Again, how they're included will be different depending on the form your project takes. If it's something where you have a written component already, like the project itself, or an artist statement, or a reflection on whatever you've done, these can be included at the end. If they're in a video, you might need a credit slide. These need to be related to what you actually did, and they need to be properly cited. Next up, creativity. This is one that's kind of hard to grade because creativity is something that is a little bit subjective. But in general, this is being graded on the basis of, is this something that you clearly found interesting and exciting? And have you tried to, in some way or another, think outside the box with this? Did you come up with a really cool art project? Did you get other people involved in putting it together? Even if it's something that it's like maybe not specifically an art project, creativity in this case can be, is it a really cool topic that you're really clearly interested in? Or is it something that clearly you're passionate about? All of these fall under that. Also in this is, in general, for each of the 3 capstones, are you exploring different ways to do the project? Like, if for your first project you turn in a term paper and it's about something that you're excited about, great. When Unit 2 rolls around, though, and if you do the exact same thing, that's not going to score as highly on this criteria. I want you to be exploring different ways of connecting with the information. There are exceptions, obviously. If you explicitly set out to make a series of art pieces, for instance, great. Next up is execution. How well did you make use of the chosen medium, and does it work as a thing? If you make a video and it's just, I realize that this is a terrible example to bring up, but like, if you just record you reading off some PowerPoint slides, it's probably not going to work for this project. I realize that I am saying this in a video where I'm primarily reading off PowerPoint slides, but this does serve a different purpose than these unit capstones do. So think more of like some of the other videos for this class where there's diagrams and video clips and that sort of thing. So this is basically like, does it work? And there will be a full breakdown of what this looks like on the rubric. Next, accessible format. Whatever you submit, I need to be able to access it and grade it. If you're turning in something that's a written document, it needs to be one of the standard .doc, PDF, docx, text, no .pages documents, please. I cannot open them. If you're turning in something that's a video or it's an image, make sure it's in a standard format and not in some like weird Adobe proprietary format. This is one that, in general, if you turn it in the format that I can open and all the files are there, great. If you turn it in and one or more of them is something I can't open, you get another chance to turn it in. I'll let you know if I can't access your files. That's how you would end up with partial credit on this criteria. You get all 5 of those points if everything's accessible the first time. If not, and it's not like a Canvas ate my document thing, you'll start to lose points based on how much of an issue it is. Attention to detail is the next criteria at 10 points. Did you put in the time? And have you made sure that everything is nice and polished and a presentable final product? For this one, this can be one that people really struggle with, particularly in the writing stage of things. I really encourage you to reach out to the Student Writing Center and other resources on campus if that's something you struggle with. Not only are you allowed to do that for this assignment, I 100% encourage you to do it. I'm not going to be the spelling police, but if you have a lot of errors that start to build up to the point where it's difficult to follow what you're doing, that's where you lose points on this. Effort. Like creativity, this is kind of hard to evaluate. So these 10 points are being allocated on how much time and energy did you put into this. Your expectation for this project is that you should put in about as much time as you would expect to put in on a term paper or studying for like a pretty difficult final. Expect somewhere in the 8 to 12 hours range all told, from brainstorming to turning it in. If you put in more, great. If you manage to pull off something that it's clear that you worked really hard on, maybe you managed to pull it off in less time. But in general, the expectation here is that it's clear that you have tried and made a good faith effort to do the project. Next, 10 points for completion. And in this case, what that means is this a cohesive single unit that stands on its own? For instance, if you cover a topic and there's some major aspect of that you just do not address, there's some big hole in what you're covering that you just don't talk about. Having unanswered questions is one thing. This is science after all. That's kind of our job security. But if there's some really basic and really integral part of whatever your topic is that you just don't acknowledge, that's where you're going to lose points in this category. And then finally, the last 10 points remaining, accuracy. Whatever it is that is your topic or your theme, you got to be accurate. The information you present has to be correct. If you're doing something that does delve into the realms of sci-fi, fantasy, speculative fiction, or whatever, that's fine. Just make sure it's really clear that whatever it is that you're speculating about, it needs to be logical and based on the facts. If you need kind of an analog for that, think more hard sci-fi rather than space opera. I do love me a good space opera, but this is probably, unless you're really thoughtful about how you do it, this is probably not the best route for that. Like I said, there is a rubric posted online, or will be very shortly after this video goes live, that breaks down just what full and partial points in each of these categories looks like. So please review that, and if you have any questions, please talk to me. Finally, let's just go over some guidelines for what this project can be. As I said, I really want to encourage you to be creative, but we do need to make sure that there are some boundaries we're clear about. First of all, content. I review some specific requirements in this regard in the Unit Capstone doc. But overall, basically, you need to remember the course policies. While there are themes and topics about the history of how biology has intersected with discrimination and oppression, and those are things you absolutely can cover. You need to think about the way you're doing it and approach it with a level of respect and sensitivity. A project that is instead based on advocating for that sort of thing won't be accepted. If you write a paper that's all about how trans people aren't real because biology, first of all, you haven't been paying attention to the course material that well. And second of all, it breaks our course policies on respecting others, and as such would just receive a 0. And if it's really bad, it may need to be forwarded for higher level disciplinary stuff. So just be respectful. If you turn in a manifesto on why eugenics is great, that's not going to be something that gets you very far on this assignment. In other more nuanced content guidelines, if you're doing something, particularly if you're doing anything that's creating fiction in any medium, be really considered about your use of graphic depictions of violence, sex, gore, stuff like that. Again, when in doubt, please get in touch with me and we'll talk about it. For instance, if you're doing something that requires pictures of surgery, that's a fine thing to include. If you're writing some short fiction though, and just want to include a really graphic violence scene just because, maybe reconsider that. This is mainly because I am the one who has to grade all of these, and if there's not a clear purpose for it to be there, it's not something that I necessarily want to have to experience. So remember, somebody is reading all of these or watching or reviewing all of these, and it's me. So next up in terms of guidelines, cite your sources. This is not only just graded, This is an overall thing in regards to plagiarism. You need to cite your sources in the appropriate manner. This also means no plagiarism and no use of AI software. This is a hard rule. You know, if it's something that's like, oh, well, you paraphrased something and you didn't cite the source, like, that's something we'll talk about. If I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is getting flagged as being a short story that somebody else published, or this reads like something that ChatGPT wrote, or this is some weird AI imagery where people have like 7 fingers and far too many teeth, and you're not disclosing that, that's automatically going to be treated as plagiarism and be dealt with as outlined in course policies. In general, none of these assignments should be using AI software. In a lot of cases, it's going to be really clear if you did. So please just don't open that can of worms. Also, fun fact, ChatGPT, even if you use it to do things like outline or suggest sources for something, which is something that a lot of students I've encountered will try to do, it will just straight up make up facts and make up papers and sources that do not exist. So please be aware of that. Next, so in general, this, like all the other assignments in class, is designed to be an individual project that you work on your own. However, there is more flexibility here that if you really want to do this with a group of other students, that is okay, and we'll consider it. You will need to, as a whole group, meet with me, and, we'll make sure that it's outlined just what everybody's responsibilities are, and just to make sure that we're being fair about how effort is being distributed and that everybody's putting in the work. Next, safety first. If you're doing something that, you're going to go film something in a cool spot, or you want to do something outdoors or whatever, make sure you're being safe about it. Please do not turn in a video where you're like standing on top of like some really tall building with no safety harness. You will give me a heart attack. That will activate all of my parental instincts, and just please don't put me through that. This is a class project that is worth 100 points. Please do not put your life at risk for it. Likewise, if you're doing something that is going to involve other people's participation, you as the person putting on this project need to be mindful of the fact you are responsible for their safety. And if this is something that you're not really sure how to handle, again, please talk with me. As somebody who has done a lot of both courses and outdoor education events and all sorts of events like that, I am very familiar with putting together safety plans. And so if that's something applicable to your project, please consult with me and I can help you with that. And then finally, the last guideline. I know I said this earlier, but I really want you to have fun with this. The purpose of this is to give you a chance to talk about and explore the concepts we're talking about in class in a way that you're really excited about. Please be creative, think outside the box, and do something that you personally are excited about. In the coming weeks, I will be posting videos on more specific aspects of this and other general course stuff, like how to find and cite sources. If there is a topic that you really would like me to cover as part of those, please reach out and we'll figure something out. I want to equip you to do this project in a way that allows you to fully participate and make whatever it is you want to do happen. And so, with that, good luck.